Hello, spooky friends, and welcome to another episode of the Scaryish podcast.
Woo!
Wow, that sounded weird this time. It didn't sound like normal.
Thanks, appreciate that.
I'm Robin Grace. This is Adam Diaz.
Hello.
And we're here to talk about some things that we researched this week, and we want to share with everyone.
Indeed, I'm pretty excited about mine. I did sound a little bit different because I have a little tiny bit of a cold. I know, put me in quarantine. Everyone freaked the fuck out. Shouldn't be that big of a deal. I'm hoping to be over it pretty quickly. But yeah, I'm excited to talk about my topic. Robin, what are you going to be covering this week?
It's a true crime week. For me, I'm going to be covering the inspiration behind the movie Scream.
I had no idea there was actually a murder that was an inspiration behind that movie.
I didn't either.
So that'll be really interesting.
But it's like every time you see a horror movie or something like that, or like a movie that has to do with murders and stuff like that, I always assume there has to be one.
Really?
You know?
You don't think anyone is creative enough to create a story in Hollywood that wasn't inspired by something that actually happened?
Like that movie Hush on Netflix about the deaf woman who has someone break into her house, pretty much. That movie has to have a story that happened. You know, there's no way. It's just so out of the box.
Someone listening right now is like, it sure does. And they're totally going to tweet at us and let us know.
That'd be cool.
So I'm going to be covering Champ, the lake monster, which I am really, really excited to cover because, as everyone knows that listens to the show, I'm a huge fan of the Loch Ness monster. So this is like a distant cousin, and it's always nice to hear about, the fam and stuff like that.
Okay.
So if anyone has a story that they would like to relay to us or to have us read on the Storytime episodes, we call those homegrown horrors. Robin, what constitutes a homegrown horror?
So it could be paranormal, supernatural, spiritual stories that you've experienced, your family has experienced, your friends have experienced. It could be true crime. You got any true crime stories? Share with us. Did your mom almost get picked up by a serial killer? Who knows? We'd like to know.
Indeed. And if you have stories like that, please email storytime@scaryish.com or hit us up on any of our social medias. We would absolutely love to hear from you, or go to our website, scaryish.com, and click on Contact Us. But we would definitely like to hear from you, and we are going to have the Storytime episode the day that this comes out, on Tuesday, as always, at 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We record those live at youtube.com/Scaryish or twitch.tv/Scaryish Podcast, and we hope to see you folks there. So that said, I think I'm going to be going first this week.
All right.
I'm going to jump right into it. And like I mentioned this week, I actually really didn't know what cryptid I was going to cover, but I knew that come hell or high water, I was going to cover a cryptid. I really wanted to cover a cryptid. And since I have a sniffle and have immediately considered the fact, as soon as I realized, oh no, I'm getting a little sick, that I'll probably be dead soon, I decided that if I'm going out, it's going to be talking about a majestic cryptid that makes me hang my I Want to Believe poster around my neck like a crazy person carrying it around like a necklace.
All right.
So I was like, yeah, well, I can't talk about the Loch Ness Monster twice, so let me find out who else is like the Loch Ness Monster. So without much more chirping, let's get at it, good buddies. I'm covering Champ, the lake monster. And yes, you heard that right. Champ is a lake monster because, believe it or not, the Loch Ness Monster, or Nessie, is not the only lake monster to have been sighted and believed to be in existence. In fact, there are over 50 known lake monsters around the world that are said to exist that all share similar appearance to that of the Loch Ness Monster. And if you're like me and you're a purist, you're a Nessie fan.
It's just a plesiosaur. All these lakes got plesiosaurs all up in them.
Well, that's the thing, is that who the hell knows, you know? I think it's about time, though, that the spooky friends started learning more about Nessie's homies, or fam. And although there are over 50 other creatures that are out there, supposedly, I've only ever heard of one other one aside from Nessie. And it is this one, which is why I chose it. So the next time we go over a lake monster, it'll be fun. But it'll be brand new information for me. So it'll be kind of exciting. A little bit nerve-wracking, I guess. The nice thing about this cryptid is this one is stateside. And this particular cryptid is often sighted in western Vermont, eastern New York, and southern Quebec. Or Quebec, however you like to say it. The creature in question, as previously stated, is affectionately named Champ, and that particular moniker comes from the body of water in which it resides, similar to how...
What lake? Is it Lake Champlain?
It is Lake Champlain, yeah. So it's similar to how Loch Ness Monster is named Nessie because of Loch Ness and everything like that. Champ gets its name from Lake Champlain. And what's really funny about this is I always knew Lake Champlain was like in between Vermont and New York. That's how I remembered, like, when you have the map that you have to like fill out in like third grade or fourth grade or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
that shows you which states are where. I just remember that Lake Champlain sat on the border between New York and Vermont. And that made me remember that Vermont is next to New York. And then, like, that just helped me get through that when I was a kid.
Is it one of the Great Lakes?
No, it is not one of the Great Lakes.
Oh, I don't
not
know.
at all.
I wouldn't know.
Anyways, what's funny about that is I didn't realize until I started this topic that people in Quebec had sightings of Champ. And then I did a little bit of research on that, and I realized just how fucking dumb I am. The founder of Quebec is a guy named Samuel de Champlain. And he's the dude the fucking lake is named after.
That's pretty cool.
So the fact that I didn't even know that the lake, one, ran into Canada, into Quebec, and that the sightings were also found in Quebec, and like, I think southern Montreal in particular, is kind of annoying that my brain was that dumb. But hey, now I know, and now you know. And documented sightings of Champ go back as far as 1819, so over 200 years ago at this point. But the legend of a lake monster in Lake Champlain goes back even before then. The Native Americans of the area, in particular the Abenaki and the Iroquois, had legends about some creature that lived in Lake Champlain. And their legends state that it was an underwater horned serpent that was enormous and would feed on humans. Which
That's
is
terrifying.
Absolutely terrifying. And I can say, spoiler alert for the rest of this topic, that although there are a lot of documented sightings of this creature, there aren't any, like,
Attacks?
people that were eaten or attacks
Okay.
or anything like that.
But
so,
are there missing people? Like, people
No.
have gone missing on the lakefront? No.
I mean, I haven't really investigated all of the missing cases of people, like, in the area of, like, New York, like Western New York or Eastern Vermont or anything like that, but there's nothing that's been tied to the lake monster.
All right.
So I just think it's pretty funny that, like, the original legend is that it was huge and it would feed on humans. What I find interesting is that these creatures that supposedly exist all over the world are seen in either one of two ways. It's either like a serpent or an eel, you know, like this giant sea creature that's essentially just a big-ass snake that lives in the water, or a plesiosaurus, like you were mentioning, where it's like, you know, got like the body that's a little bit wide and like fins, and then it has the long neck that's kind of like a brontosaurus, and that elongated head that looks more like a snake. And that's what we associate when we hear lake monster or Nessie, or in this case Champ, for anyone who's heard of Champ before. That's sort of the thing that you think of. But more recently, in a lot of the studies being done in the Loch Ness in particular, people are starting to think that there's actually a creature that lives there, but it's probably more akin to a giant mutated eel. So that would, like, fit that whole sea serpent legend that exists for Champ in particular. Well, I don't know which one would be, like, the quote-unquote correct way to view these things. I would just say whatever is in your mind's eye, that's how I want you to view it, and then I'm going to give you these sightings and let you know what other folks saw. So, the sighting that dates back to 1819 was reported on in the publication known as the Plattsburgh Republican. Issue was from July 24th, 1819, and it wound up on page 2. Yes, I pulled the article. It was a pain in the ass to read because it was not scanned well, but it's literally a document that's over 200 years old, so the fact that it's been, like, digitized in some way, shape, or form is pretty impressive.
That's really cool.
I was just really stunned that I could find it. According to this 1819 article, a man named Captain Crumb, which definitely sounds like a cereal mascot, claims to have spotted a creature with black, leathery skin and eyes the color of a peeled onion. It was about
What?
It was, quote,
Who says that?
it was 1819, so I guess that's the only color palette things that they had, like
White.
peeled onion. Yep,
Egg white.
sounds right.
I don't know. Beige.
It was, quote, about 187 feet long. I like how the approximation is 187 feet, with a flat head and a mouth that only held 3 teeth, 2 on the bottom and 1 on the top, which kind of makes it look like an adorable cartoon character.
Maybe
in
it
my
was
brain.
just a baby.
It could have just been a baby. Who the hell knows? Because it's been around for so friggin' long, you know? The creature, like I mentioned, was black in color, but it had a star on the forehead, and around the neck, it was said that it had a belt of red. So it's like it has
This thing sounds like a monster. Like, it just sounds like some kid drew it.
It kind of sounds like it has a really nice choker on because it's going out for a night on the town. But who knows? Like, it's a really vivid description from a person who is very well respected. And after this creature cruised around the surface at a very significant speed, to the point where they said they wouldn't be able to catch it, It submerged again and was not seen. And Captain Crumb had no idea what he had seen. It sounds ridiculous saying the name Captain Crumb, but that's legitimately his name. But it was shocking enough, and he was respected enough in the community that he was able to make page 2 of the newspaper just by telling someone, hey, here's what I saw. And he claims to have witnessed the creature from around 200 yards away. So not terribly far, but not relatively close. And apparently he wasn't the only one. Other fishing boats claimed to have seen the creature that same day and were, quote, on the lookout for quite some time after that. And although the documented sightings of Champ aren't plentiful in the 1800s, by the time 1873 hit, a guy who went by the name of P.T. Barnum put a price on the creature's head, dead or alive.
Is that the
Barnum and Bailey Circus?
Oh my
P.T. Barnum. I mean, like, the fact that it was so popular that this guy who had a show that I hear was the greatest showed up and decided he wanted this creature to be part of his show, like, shows you how, like, widespread the legend of Champ had become. And I also pulled it. I had to know what was the value of the cash reward. It was $50,000. And I know what you're thinking. How much is that worth? 1873, someone offers $50,000 to catch something. If it were today, if P.T. Barnum was alive right now and said, I want you to go catch me that thing, he would be offering $1,077,825.
Dang.
That is the inflation rate for how much $50,000 was worth in 1873.
That is insane.
So he set off just like a flurry of people hunting through those waters trying to catch this thing. And you won't be shocked to find out no one caught Champ. And a decade later, there was another official sighting in 1883, and this one came from an officer of the law, one Sheriff Nathan Mooney of Clint County, New York, claimed to have seen Champ. The date of the sighting was July 30th, which is very near the time the sighting took place over 60 years prior. Again in July, which I think is kind of coincidental, but also maybe telling of why the creature comes out when it comes out.
All right. I was thinking more of like, it's the 60th anniversary of this thing. We should bring it back up again.
I was feeling like it has to do with like the temperature and when it decides to like come out of wherever it hangs out, but that's just me wanting to believe. So it was 4:30 p.m. When describing the weather at the time, Mooney stated, quote, a very wild one. Thunderstorms raging all around the sky, sending the wind to all 4 points on the compass, with frequent downpours of rain, the sun obscured by dark clouds, the sea rough. So it's like the perfect conditions that you would expect to see a monster in. And the publication to run this story was one Plattsburgh Morning Telegram.
Oh, not the National Enquirer?
No,
all right.
I don't think it existed yet. Basically, I think every publication was like half news, half horseshit, but who knows. His statement is as follows, quote, I looked off to the northwest and I saw it appear again about 20 rods from us. What is a rod? You're probably asking.
To say that.
It is 5.5 feet, and I'm glad that never caught on because I'm glad we don't measure things with rods or measure things with distances of 5.5 feet. I'm sorry, it's 5.5 yards, not feet, yards.
Okay, I was going to say, like, we do measure things in yards, which are 3 feet.
3 feet, but at least it's like an even number, you know? And like meters are 3.1, right around there, so at least that kind of matches. Like yards and meters are very close, but like rods, who the fuck would know conversion rate for rod to meter or yard? It's just a huge pain in the ass.
That's just the name of the guy they had around that was 5 feet 1 inches. And
he was 5.5 feet tall, yeah.
How many rods? Hey, Rod, how tall are you? All right, that's a rod.
He was about 20 rods away, and they're all like, who the hell is Rod? And he raises his hand like, oh, okay, we got it. So he was saying it was 110 yards away, roughly the length of one football field, if you want to know just about how far away this thing was, which is far enough away where people are going to be skeptical that you saw what you saw, close enough where if it was real and you were there, you'd be fucking terrified because it's way, way too close to you. He went on to say, quote, I then discovered that it was an enormous snake or water serpent. It stood about 5 feet from the water with a long jaw, a snake-shaped head with at least 8 inches across the top or flat part and 10 inches from the top of the head to the end of the jaw. Its body, which must have been 25 or 35 feet in length, was pointed to the north.
So you're saying it had a cuddleable head, like you could cuddle it.
Well, here's the thing. I imagine that this thing is quite scary if it exists and anyone saw it, but everything that everyone describes this as just makes me want to hug it. And, like, I think that's just because I'm totally obsessed with lake monsters and Loch Ness Monster, Nessie, all that shit. And, like, I always have the picture in my head of, like, the cute cartoon version of it. So no matter how terrifying they make it in the description, I'm always like, oh my god, it's adorable. So Mooney claims to have seen round white spots inside the creature's mouth. That's how close he was, is that he described these bizarre round spots in its mouth. And a sighting like this from a fairly well-known man of the time was pretty surprising. He was another very respected person. It's over 60 years since the last one, and he claims to have seen this thing. And over the course of the next few years, quite a few sightings would come in from folks around or on the lake at the time, and the sightings became so frequent that P.T. Barnum showed up again and offered $50,000 again for anyone who could bring him the creature, dead or alive. And again, no one caught the creature. So, I mean, immediately you must think, oh, clearly it's because there's no creature. I personally think because Champ is a pretty badass guy at hiding. Like, he's just really good at it. So he's not going to get caught. And the sightings would continue, like, throughout the entire contest to catch it until P.T. Barnum finally called it off. And it would continue for the next century, and they would come in from New York, Vermont, and Quebec.
What if he has one ring to rule them all?
I hate you so much. We just watched all 3 Lord of the Rings because quarantine is boring as fuck. But, yeah, fun stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. You never know. Maybe he had this ring, and he slipped it on. He's like, I'm invisible, bitches. And then
Okay, now you're starting to make some sense. Because, like, this whole thing, this reference doesn't make any sense.
Every 60 years, he's like, oh, slipping it off. Gotta give my hand a rest.
That's what that red ring was around his neck. Just so you know.
Shit!
There you go.
That's what it is.
So sightings wound up spiking again in the mid-1930s, which, of course, was because it's the same time frame as the famous surgeon's photo for the Loch Ness Monster. Side note, if you want to hear more about the Loch Ness Monster, it's episode 31. I highly encourage you to check it out. Spoiler warning for that episode. This is just a reminder. The surgeon's photo was almost certainly fake. The folks who took it and took credit for it later admitted that they faked the photo. I'm pretty sure there was like this grudge thing going on with the newspaper that they knew would run it. And if you want the details of why that happened and what happened, just check out episode 31. But that picture and what was done to fake it, quote unquote, was that a serpent's head was fashioned out of, I think, clay or molded somehow onto a toy submarine, which was then just floated in the water, and they took a picture of it. And that's the image that we all know and love of the Loch Ness Monster that floats in everyone's brains, is a picture that was a fake toy. And now the description from Champ that came from 1819, like, predates it by 110 years. Predates the hoax by 110 years. And it's incredibly similar to that of Nessie and other lake monsters and what was photographed in the 1930s, which later was told to be fake, which is something I tell myself because this next part is a bit sketchy. Because on July 5th, 1977, a lady named Sandra Mancy was on vacation with her family when she spotted something odd sticking out of the lake. And she did what everyone would do if they're on vacation with their family at the lake. She just stopped paying attention to them. But in the meantime, she took a photo of what was sticking out of the lake, and that photo is going to be on our Instagram. So if you're listening to this, you want to see what it is, go over to our Instagram. It's at Scaryish Podcast. It'll also be on our Facebook as well. Everything that we actually post our episodes with will automatically post to Facebook for us. It stopped working for a little while, so I just started taking it over and making the post on Instagram post automatically to Facebook, so our Facebook people can actually see the pictures as well. So if you've been going to Instagram to see them, you can also go to Facebook, which is facebook.com/Scaryish Podcast. You can go there to check out this photo that was taken by Sandra Mancy on July 5th, 1977. And the picture is shockingly similar to the surgeon's photo of the 1930s, except that this one is in color, so it kind of has that going for it. It appears to be further away from the actual creature, so it's taken from the shore. The creature seems to be further out in the water, so the question of perspective being warped because you can't really tell exactly what was taken on the lake, that's not here like it was with the surgeon's photo. And it certainly looks like this could be a photo of either some sort of oversized snake in the water or what we traditionally think of as a lake monster. But there are issues with this picture that came in, and people started becoming very skeptical when they, one, started asking Mancy where she took the photo from, and when they started like comparing where it was actually taken from with like landmarks that can be seen in the distance, and they just basically narrowed down the true location of the photo. And when I think about that, I think if someone were actively trying to fake a photo, they just look for any location on the lake and put out whatever manufactured apparatus that they built into the water and wait for the perfect time to snap a photo, you know? You'd probably look for someplace isolated where there's not a lot of people around. And one of the challenging things would be that when it comes to faking that picture, you really don't know the ins and outs of the lake like someone who would actually live on the lake. And after examining the picture and speaking with her, obviously, that location being nailed down determined something that people really wanted to know, because the distance the quote-unquote creature would have been at when the picture was taken made people start saying that it was absolutely a hoax. And it was people that believed in Champ. But when they looked at it, they said, okay, well, where you took that picture is in this particular bay. And that particular bay, nowhere within it is there a deeper spot than 14 feet deep. So a lake monster that's like supposed to be just slightly under 200 feet in length would have an extremely difficult time, one, swimming there, and two, staying hidden there, you know? Everyone else would have seen it that day, and even the photo shows how blue the water is, so as soon as it's submerged, you should have been able to see it, you know?
Yeah.
And it's claimed that it popped up, she snapped the photograph, it went away, and that was that. So some folks suggested later on, after she started getting grilled, that it may have just been an honest mistake, and that a piece of tree maybe popped up because the waves were kind of choppy and it was like dislodged from the shore, and then it floated by and it resembled in the distance that of like a sea serpent's neck coming out. And I have a picture of how people suggest this could have happened. I personally feel like folks were trying to make excuses for the picture because it got everyone super hyped up, and then once it was examined a little bit closer and it was picked apart, there was a lot of criticism for it. And P.T. Barnum did not run his contest to capture the creature again on account of being dead for the last 86 years.
Aww.
So the public interest, though, did kick up again with plenty of sightings, and the photo taken in 1977 is still considered by many to be quote-unquote hard evidence behind this legend. I just don't think it seems very hard. Side note, yes, I knew how that sentence was going to sound when I wrote it.
Shut up.
I own it. I don't shy away from it. So sightings did continue through the 80s and the 90s, with the next piece of hard evidence arriving in 2005, and it arrived on July 11th, 2005, to be exact. And say what you will about the dubiousness of that picture and the sightings and this thing I'm about to tell you right now, it's definitely very interesting that either people always decide to hoax this thing in July, or this thing always shows up in July, because of the 4 major sightings that have happened of this thing, they all happened within like 15 to 30 calendar days of each other, you know? It's always July when this is taking place.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
It makes it, I don't know, when it comes to temperature, though, I'm kind of skeptical, because water temperature is going to be different in that same time of year.
Yeah, based off of which year you're in. But yeah. I bet you if you went down and examined, like, I wonder if the water temperature was similar in this year when it popped up and 60 years later and this year when it popped up, you might find some similarities. So, but that's just me wildly speculating because I want to believe. So, a guy named Dick Affolter and his stepson Pete Bodette, which must be related to Tom Bodette, were on the lake and saw something under the water they could not identify. They're on a boat, they're actually moving, and they saw something like next to their boat. So they whipped out their camera and they took a video of this mysterious creature / object that they couldn't identify prior to it like fully submerging and not being able to be seen anymore. Now the video itself was actually really difficult to locate on the internet because YouTube has taken it down in a bunch of various forms, but there was an ABC investigation on Champ that includes this video, and I was finally able to watch it there. And although it does look like maybe some sort of snake or eel is under the water, to state that it's Champ definitively would just be foolish because you really can't tell. I will say that it does look like it's something that's real. I should rephrase that. It looks like it's something that's alive, that's
something
moving.
Tangible.
Something tangible. It doesn't look like it's debris. It looks like it actually like kind of moves a little bit, and it's definitely serpentine. They brought in 2 retired FBI forensic image analysts to examine the tape taken by Dick and Pete. And they both claim that they can confirm.
Their names are Dick and Pete.
I mean, like the dad and his stepson, yeah, were Dick and Pete.
All right.
So they state that they can confirm that the video was not manipulated in any way and that it is 100% authentic. One of them did want to have the caveat by making mention of the fact that although they can ensure the video's authenticity, they can't identify anything in the video as an animal or other object on the surface. They're basically like, what they're saying is, Champ, we don't even see. But what we can say is the video is real, you know? So it's kind of like people are seeing what they want, but the FBI can state that, and these guys are retired, so it wasn't official FBI, but they can state that, yeah, the video is real.
Yeah.
So that's fair enough. You know, if you want to check out the video, Google like Champ FBI or Champ 2005 video and see for yourself. One of the most interesting pieces of evidence that I found when I was doing my research that is going to let me keep my I Want to Believe poster up on the wall actually came from the Fauna Communications Research Institute when they were working with the Discovery Channel to investigate the lake, and they came across something super interesting in 2003. Lake Champlain has sounds that are recorded underwater consistently that are unidentifiable, and they're coming from the wildlife. In fact, there are only 2 species of animals known to produce sounds that are even similar to what they're recording underwater. One of them are dolphins, and the second are beluga whales. Lake Champlain has neither dolphins nor beluga whales, it's so bizarre, and it was so compelling that they published all their evidence in a 2010 journal called the Journal of Acoustical Society of America, because they simply don't know what the hell is producing the sound.
Kind of like that bloop thingamajiggy?
Well, the bloop is pretty much ice cracking underwater, like a glacier cracking.
Okay.
And it's like one of the loudest sounds that would ever be heard on the planet, just carrying through the water at super deep levels.
Oh, okay.
But this one is like, yeah, we're recording a sound. It's like animal in nature. I don't know the best way to say that. It's of like a biological origin, I think is the best way to say it, and they can't identify what it is, because the 2 likely candidates don't exist in the lake. Like, Lake Champlain doesn't have those animals. So, like, we don't know what it is. Like, we don't know if it's like some combination of 2 animals, or if it's like distortion that we're recording, but we're recording it really, really consistently, and it's been published in this journal. So it's really compelling that there's something there that they can't identify. And personally, I think there may be something there under those waves that no one would expect, and not just because I really want something to be there, but because that piece of evidence is really compelling. And one thing that I usually get really skeptical on is when locals try and capitalize on these things, like local festivals or silly stuff like that. And there's not a lot of that happening here, but it is probably worth mentioning that if you're in Vermont and you're looking to catch a minor league baseball game, feel free to check out the Vermont Lake Monsters, the minor league team named after Champ.
Their team is named the Lake Monsters?
The Vermont Lake Monsters.
That's cute.
And if you're lucky enough, you can probably take a picture with their mascot, Champ. No joke. Their mascot is named
That's
Champ,
cute.
and it looks like a walking, talking version of this creature. And if you're over in New York, check out Port Henry. They have a giant statue of Champ in Port Henry, which is just right on Lake Champlain. In addition to that, if you're there for the first Saturday of August, you are there in time for quote-unquote Champ Day, which is a local celebration honoring the lake monster that has apparently existed for centuries, meaning the lake monster, that has never hurt anyone and is so good at hiding that mostly everyone doesn't believe it exists, which means it's kind of weird to honor a creature like so isolated with a huge celebration that includes kids' games by the Little Champs Daycare, which is the name of a daycare center.
All right.
Penelope the Clown, don't know who that is. Craft and merchandise vendors where they sell like Champ-related stuff. Children's painting sessions where they draw Champ. Sailboat racing, food vendors, a DJ, and a cardboard boat race.
That's kind of cute.
It's a big event, and it's definitely one of those things where they're bringing in tourists to capitalize on the fact that they're like bought into this lake monster thing. So it does raise my skeptic flag, even if I really, really, really want to go. Previous years have even included a parade where they have like a Champ float that like multiple people have to carry. So I did check to see if this is going to be going on this year. And despite the information on the internet all stating that it's the first Saturday of August, I show that last year's date for the festival was actually July 21st, which was a Sunday. So the internet lies, folks. Go and check things out if you actually want to see what date they're going to be on. And lots of things are canceled right now, so if you are looking to attend this festival, just keep an eye on it, go to their official website. But what it comes down to is Champ real? Well, clearly Champ is 100% real based off of everything I just said.
You're so dumb.
But let's just leave Champ be. It's clearly a very private creature that understands the importance of social distancing, which is something I think we all need to understand.
Oh my gosh.
And that, my spooky friends, is Champ the lake monster.
Thank you. You know what's so funny about all these creatures that people say look serpentine, like or I don't even know if that's the word. They look serpent-like. They look like they are eels or something like that. And cultures throughout history all have these creatures, like in Chinese lore, their dragons look like fucking snakes.
Horned serpents. Like, you hear it all the fucking time.
It's crazy that so many cultures have these creatures that look that way. It's just really
It's like
neat.
every ancient culture in the world, and most of which were never connected to one another.
Makes you wonder if they're real.
It's just they all have some sort of serpent or like horned eel or something bizarre that looks like that's either revered or feared, you know?
Yeah.
But it's always something very powerful that's very like prevalent in their societies, and it just hasn't gone away. We're just more skeptical about things now. So I find it fascinating, and I hope you do too.
I do. Thank you. That was great.
All right. Well, we're going to take a quick commercial break before Robin gets into her topic, so we will be right back.
Boop, 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 boop. Bloop, 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 bloop. All right, so I guess it's my turn now. And hopefully you guys think this one's fun, because I thought it was pretty. I mean, okay, no, it's not fun.
It's about murder. So how
it's
fun
about
could it
murder.
Be? How could it not be fun?
It is about murder, so it's not supposed to be fun, but it's kind of interesting because I find things like this interesting. I don't know, it's just me. Anyway, I'm sure many of you guys are familiar with the movie Scream from the 90s. Did you ever watch it? I remember watching it growing up. It's that movie with the I Know What You Did Last Summer type shit, right? Or is that I Know What You Did Last Summer?
That's I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Right, hold on.
Scream has the Ghostface killer. Scream has the Ghostface killer where it's all about like people who are like super into movies.
The call is coming from inside the house, that one.
It's not even the call is coming from inside the house. It's just like people are getting prank called and asked a bunch of questions about scary movies.
Oh, what's your favorite scary movie?
Exactly.
That stuff. Okay, I don't know why I thought, like, I Know What You Did Last
The whole premise of this movie was written and, like, the whole first movie was done before Caller ID.
You know why?
Was something that was everywhere.
I mix the two movies is because just the other night I watched Scary Movie.
And it mixes both of them.
Yeah, the Scary Movie is the satirical version that mixes, like, all these different horror movies to get, oh my god. That's why I mixed the two together. Okay, anyway, you can watch it on Netflix. It's on Netflix right now. Today, we're going to go over the serial killer that inspired the writer of Wes Craven's Scream, Kevin Williamson. And it inspired him to create, like, the whole film series. It was really cool. It's True Crime Week, y'all. We're going to cover murders. It's going to be great. Not really. In August of 1990, a serial killer went around... No, Siri, no.
That's so funny. Every time you say serial killer, Siri's going to lose her shit right now. She's listening to us.
It. How do you turn her off?
I don't know. It's your iPad.
That's not nice.
She's so creepy.
Weirdo. Okay. In August of 1990, a serial killer went around terrorizing the city of Gainesville, Florida. It may have only been over the span of 4 days, but it was enough to have Williamson so fascinated with it that he wrote a movie that raked in over $100 million.
It was really popular.
Just in the U.S.
I remember when it came out, everyone was like, it's really fucking
supposedly,
good. You gotta see it.
Supposedly, the budget was only $14 million.
I believe it.
So, like... raking in that much money on top of that's fucking insane. Anyway, so Danny Harold Rolling was born May 26, 1954.
Your script, I just looked over, says 2954. I was like, time-traveling serial killer. Get the fudge out of here.
It's 2 a.m. right now, okay? When I typed this shit out, it taught my brain so much dyslexia in this whole thing, okay? So... Daniel,
dyslexia is when you mix up words and letters. You just added in the wrong one there.
Okay. Daniel Harold Rolling, also known as the Gainesville Ripper. And as with a number of murderers, he did come from a pretty dysfunctional family. He was born in Shreveport? Okay. So he was born in Shreveport, Louisiana, to a James and Claudia Rolling. And he also had a brother named Kevin, but you never hear about Kevin after this. So, meh.
Did they see him rolling? Were they hating?
Yeah, they were
trying
hating.
to catch him riding dirty.
Yep. So his dad was a police officer, so you'd hope that he was an all right guy. And, he was one of those cops, those upstanding cops that just wanted to hold the law, true to the law and all that stuff. And good
Uphold
guy.
the law.
Uphold, you know what I mean. Shut up. But he was kind of a piece of shit. And
That sucks.
I'm not saying this as any excuse for the things that Danny ended up doing, but his dad was a piece of work. And he would tell Danny that he was unwanted from birth. Imagine growing up every day and your dad tells this to you to your face. How fucked up is that?
That's really fucked up.
He was abusive to his mother. So this guy was just super duper douchebag. There's one instance where Danny's mom had to go to the hospital after claiming that her husband tried to force her to cut herself with a razor blade. Who does that? It's just absolutely insane that someone would do that. Apparently, Claudia did make attempts to leave, but she always ended up going back. And she stayed there. When this guy was going through his trial, they were still together.
Wow.
Yeah, there's like an interview where they're interviewing the mother, and you can hear the dad screaming from a different room. This dude's a douchebag. Okay.
Wow, that's fucking nuts, dude. Who would be captured on television, like, screaming from a different room while their spouse was being interviewed?
Stupid people. Anyway, so Danny's father would do absolutely traumatizing things to this kid. If Danny embarrassed him, he would pin him to the ground and handcuff him, and then have police take his son away.
Wow.
He's an asshole. Granted, okay, my mom did some crazy stuff. Like, my younger sister and I would do stupid stuff. And so she'd be like, pack all your stuff up because the police are going to come get you and take you away. But you're like 8 years old, so you're packing your stuff up in your stupid little trash bags, and you're like taking all your clothes. Oh my God, it was pathetic.
My parents never told me I was being taken away by the police. I definitely was spanked quite a bit, though, growing up.
Yeah, I was spanked too. I think, maybe not in this new generation, but back in the day, we got spanked.
Yeah.
That's how you were punished. Anyway, so obviously, maybe not obviously, all this fucked up stuff that happened to him, he grew up into a little bit of a rebel. He was kind of a fucked up kid. By the time he was going through his late teen years, like he was starting to become an adult, he'd already been arrested a number of times for robbery while he was in Georgia, and was even caught spying on women while they were getting dressed. And it definitely didn't get better as he transitioned into adulthood. So I think when you grow up getting treated like a sack of crap your whole life, sometimes people can't just shake it off. There are people that can take it in stride and kind of better themselves and become amazing people. And sometimes it just sticks with you and you're traumatized and you can't shake it off and you're just fucked up for the rest of your life.
Yeah, some people carry their trauma very differently. And I think it's really important to understand that even if you and someone else have experienced identical trauma, like how you deal with it and how you walk away from it can be two completely different things.
And I think some people need to understand that, because they're like, well, why can't they just, get over it or something like that?
Yeah, sometimes people are like, oh, well, happiness is a choice. It's like, yeah, it is a choice. Sometimes. Like, sometimes your brain literally, like, splinters and, like, fractures to the point where you repress memories and you don't know you've done that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, it's bizarre what the human mind can do to deal with such horrific trauma. So
yeah.
It's just sad that so many people are a product of the environment they were raised in that go on to do horrific things when they had a horrific upbringing.
Yeah. He just was super messed up. He couldn't hold down a job. He just kept moving from job to job. All this stuff eventually came to a head when he tried to kill his own dad during an argument in May of 1990. So he's born in 1954, 1990, what is that, 36?
Correct.
36 years old, tries to kill his dad. His dad lost an eye and an ear as a result of this altercation. He literally shot his father twice in the head.
Holy shit, dude.
And he survived. This guy fucking survived. You could say things kind of spiraled from there, because only a few months later, he performed a number of horrific murders. Not to mention the mutilations. So, if you folks are squeamish, I'm going to let you know now. You can kind of skip this topic if you want to, but For those that are true crime aficionados and you're totally into this, stick around because...
It's like that meme where people, like, go home and they're watching the news and it makes them scared and they can't sleep, and then they turn on, like, a crime documentary and it's like, he brutally murdered his 7 children, and then it shows them, like, sleeping in the next cell.
Like,
they're just like, there we go.
Spooky Mom puts on Forensic Files to go to sleep. I think that's so funny. My cousin, too. My cousin David, he does the same thing. He puts on Forensic Files to go to sleep. I think it's... Some people like true crime. That's just how it is. In the early morning hours of Friday, August 24th, 1990, Danny Rolling was still on his degenerate spree. He was breaking into the apartment of 2 17-year-old college freshmen, Sonia Larson and Christina Powell. These girls probably just graduated high school, just got into college. They're like, life is starting. This is going to be great.
Like, we're doing all the drugs and having all the sex, and they were so excited
Shut
about
up.
it.
He came in to find Powell asleep on the couch downstairs. He did the super creepy looming over a sleeping person thing for a while, being careful not to wake her up, and then went up to find Larson in her bedroom, also asleep. So this is early morning hours. They're obviously just sleeping like a normal person would be. Unfortunately for the sleeping roommates, Rolling had no good intentions. He wasn't in there to steal stuff and leave. He could have, if that was his plan, but obviously it wasn't. So he was upstairs, found Larson sleeping. He taped her mouth shut to prevent any screaming before proceeding to stab her to death.
Jesus Christ.
He then went back down to where Powell was on the couch, taped her mouth shut. He escalated with Powell, maybe making his decisions as he was going through the house as to what he was going to do. But with Powell, he went a step further and actually bound her wrists behind her back. He then threatened her with a knife while he was like cutting her clothes off, and then proceeded to sexually assault her. After which he stabbed her 5 times in the back. So this guy's just like into the stabbing type murder. That's
I know
his.
that they say stabbing is like a form of penetration that like supplements
I didn't
the
even
fact.
think of that.
Yeah, like supplements the fact that like you have a sexual fantasy or a sexual desire that's like driving your rage or like part
That's
of your
crazy.
like perversion or whatever. So whenever anyone says that someone was stabbed, that's always something I'm waiting to hear. Is like at some point they're going to sexually assault someone.
Yeah. You can kind of see the slasher vibes here mirrored in the Scream movies, right?
I'm literally picturing the same knife because we had that image in our heads when we started this.
Yeah.
So it's like really fucking horrific when you're saying she was stabbed in the back 5 times. Because it's like, and he stabbed her in the back too. Like that's something that I haven't heard a lot.
Really?
Yeah, like usually murders are...
All these victims, he flips them over and stabs them in the back.
Wow.
All of them.
The psychology behind that has got to be just fucking mind-boggling.
After murdering these 2 women, he posed their bodies in sexually provocative positions and then had the nerve to take a shower before he left the apartment.
Doesn't that just put your DNA everywhere in that shower?
I don't know. I have no clue because they don't catch him after these first murders. So maybe he washed it down the drain. Maybe he was really smart about it. I don't know. Maybe he's a hairless, but no, he's not hairless. We're going to post pictures on Instagram, but it's just, they don't catch him. They don't catch him after these first couple murders. The next day, Rolling went on to break into yet another apartment. This time, it belonged to 18-year-old Krista Hoyt. He came through the side door. He pried it open with a combat knife and a screwdriver. And I had to look up the particular knife that he used. And it's just kind of like the knife that you imagine a hunter would take with them places, you know? This time, Hoyt wasn't home, so he waited. He literally waited in this poor girl's living room until she came home at 11 a.m. So once Hoyt entered her apartment, Rolling came up behind her and put her in a chokehold, and not in the fun pretending to pull some wrestling move sort of way. And this one had a similar MO to the first 2. He taped her mouth shut, bound her wrists, cut her clothes off, sexually assaulted her, and then stabbed her in the back, similar to what he did to Powell. And these stabbings were so intense that it actually ruptured her heart. That's how hard he stabbed her.
Oh my God.
It's so insane. And this time he escalated again. So he decapitated her, posed her head on a shelf so that it was facing her body. Like, this dude was fucked up.
Super fucked up.
It takes so much time to decapitate someone. You know, it's
I've never considered how much time it would take to decapitate someone. I just stop at the whole decapitate someone thing and just move on.
I just can't imagine how much time he had to do that. It just, gross. So the media was just all over these murders. Students were being warned to take extra precautions. They were told to change their routes, their routines. They were even starting to sleep in groups. It was so early in the semester that students even started to transfer schools or withdrawing from their classes altogether, which is so unfortunate for the schools, one. And
the students, too.
And so sad for the students that are just getting out of high school, just starting school, and they're just like, people are getting murdered. Why the fuck am I here?
Yeah, and even if you're trying to finish up your degree or taking that one class you can only take on that specific semester.
Oh, dang, dude.
But if you look young, you're like, well, you know what? I don't want to die, so I guess I'm going to go ahead and withdraw.
If you look young.
Seriously, because some people 22, 23, you're a senior, but if someone looks at you, they think you're still in high school, you know?
Oh, yeah.
They would just never know, and you don't want to bet your life on the fact that someone's going to be like, oh, yeah, she might be too old for my MO.
Yeah, I can't imagine just starting school and having all this shit pop off around me. And I'd be afraid to leave my house, one, or even go home after school, because what if someone's there waiting, you know? It's just super scary. This guy was obviously, hunting these girls. If he waited for Hoyt to come home, he knew who lived there, and that's absolutely terrifying. So 23-year-olds Tracy Paulus and Manny Tabawada were sharing an apartment on Monday, August 27th, 1990, so 3 days after Rolling's first murders. He broke into her apartment using the same tools as the previous ones. Rolling went into Tabawada's bedroom where he found him sleeping. And I don't know if he wasn't expecting Manny there or what, because maybe he didn't want to waste time with all the steps that he took for the previous murders, because he didn't get any sexual satisfaction out of it or something. Either way, all he did was struggle with Tabawada and eventually killing him. And there was no taping his mouth shut, binding his hands. There was none of that ritual, I guess. Paulus heard the commotion and came into the room, finding Rolling murdering her roommate. She obviously ran out of there, tried to barricade herself in her room, but Rolling broke through it. And
that is such a horror scene from a fucking movie. Just trying to hide in the room and seeing someone bash through the door.
And isn't that something where you're just like, this is totally like Scream. This is like girl running through the house trying to get away from this killer. He proceeded through the steps of his MO, taped mouth, bound wrists, cut off clothes, raped her, then stabbed her 3 times in the back. And he posed Paulus's body like he did with all the others, but he left Tabawada the way that he was when he killed him.
Because it didn't matter.
Because it didn't matter. Yeah, because it was just someone that he had to kill to get to what he wanted, you know? All these women were petite, Caucasian brunettes with brown eyes. So he obviously had a type. And honestly, it sounds like Christian Grey's type, just saying.
Wow, that's fucked up.
Yeah, I think that Tabawada was just like this girl's roommate, and this guy maybe was like, I have to kill him first, because if he hears me killing the other chick, then he's going to come in and stop me and do all the, you know, so I don't know. There was probably some sort of process that he went through, you know, to figure out what he was going to do, who he was going to go for, things like that. He probably had this all thought out before he even went in there. Police had 2 suspects, apparently, one of which was one of the students at the University of Florida, an 18-year-old Edward Humphrey, and they were thinking it was him because 1, he had a history of mental illness, and 2, he had scars on his face that resulted from a car accident. And because of stupid media, they kind of made him out to be the quote-unquote ideal suspect for the investigation. They kept showing his photo in the news like, this is it, you know what I mean?
That's fucked up that you would show someone's, image in the news, and without whether or not you know that this is actually the person, putting that perception in the public's mind that this is the killer is just so dangerous. It's something you really should not do.
He wasn't all roses himself, though. This Humphrey kid, the Thursday after the last set of murders, he was arrested for beating up his own grandmother. So, what the fuck?
Was his grandmother, like, ripped, though? Like, was she an asshole?
Oh my god, I highly doubt it. I mean, this kid was only 18. Maybe his grandmother was... How old would a grandma be? I can't do the math. It's too late. It's almost 3, okay?
I'm trying to find a way where it's like he was defending himself. I don't think there's any place where you beat up Nana and it's okay.
He did live in the apartment that Paulus...
You say bingo one more time, bitch, and I'm going to knock you out.
That's fucked up. I actually want to go to bingo. I've never been. I do want to go to bingo.
We have to wait a little while.
Yeah, we have to wait a little while, but I have had a lot of friends that did go to bingo, like my age, go to bingo, and they have like those little stamps for the cards, and they have like double fisting stamps so you can stamp the numbers as quickly as possible.
That's how you know you're old. You start double fisting drinks, then the next thing you know, you're double fisting bingo
stamps. Yeah, boy.
Wow.
All right. Okay, so he did live in the apartment that Paulus and Tabawada also lived at one point. A neighbor also pointed out that Humphrey did seem to have a quote-unquote major crush on Paulus. Both Humphrey and the other suspect were cleared when they arrested Rolling, though. So this guy's a piece of work himself, but...
So the two suspects they originally had were both not Rollings.
Yeah.
That's fucking crazy.
Yeah. Because this guy's just some stranger. He's not even from that town. There's no... like connection, you know? I'm sure they were looking at students that were in the school or teachers or people that actually lived in the area, dealt with them a lot, stuff like that. People never think like it's just a random killing, you know? So on September 7th, 1990, Rolling was arrested on a burglary charge of all things. I mean, he was kind of an asshole about it. He crashed a car trying to run away from authorities.
Wow.
He's a dickhead. They matched the tools that he used on the burglary to that in the Gainesville murders. They found that where he was living was in a wooded area near the apartment complexes frequented by the local students, including the victims. At his little camp he created, investigators found a number of things connecting him to the crimes, including diary entries alluding to the crimes themselves and recordings of country songs that he composed doing the same.
Wow.
During his incarceration, he was diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, and paraphilia. Paraphilia, for your information, is the experience of intense sexual arousal to atypical objects, situations, fantasies, behaviors, or individuals. So it's just like a deviant sexual arousal. Like you're just into things that are not standard, you know.
Not vanilla.
Not vanilla. Holy shit. There's more 50 Shades of Grey references for you, I guess.
Now we know where that inspiration came from.
He also met and was engaged to a Sandra London while he was in prison, and she ended up co-writing the book titled Making of a Serial Killer, The True Story of the Gainesville Murders in the Killer's Own Words. So they co-wrote this book together.
Couldn't figure out a shorter title, though. Holy shit.
Imagine being the bookstore employee and you're like, holy shit. In this book, they wrote that the culprit was mainly his troubled upbringing. Quote, as a child, my self-esteem was broken down. As a result, there was an opening in my mind, a crack, if you will. Out of that crack had come a demonic entity who thirsted for blood, end quote. This fucking twat.
Right. I take no responsibility for any of my actions. I blame my dad and the demon he let get in me.
Oh, God. He said that was why he killed these people. It's just mind-blowing what people say when they're caught and they're about to go to jail or get death penalty, stuff like that. He was officially charged with the murders in November of 1991. When Rolling was about to go to trial in 1994, he pled guilty to all 5 charges. He did confess to another triple homicide in Shreveport, Louisiana. Detectives noted that the cases had similarities between the murders that were committed in 1989, which was a year before. It just seems a bit strange to me, though, because the Shreveport murders had a whole family murdered.
Holy shit.
So there was a 55-year-old William Grissom, his 24-year-old daughter, Julie, and her 8-year-old son, Sean. Julie was mutilated, like the other girls, cleaned, and posed. So it does seem really similar. But why would Rowling go so extreme with the Shreveport murder, but then escalate like just a little bit each time with the murders of the girls in Gainesville?
I wonder if the earlier murders were a result of the fact that his home life and his family were so broken that he murders like a family. And as he's murdering this family and he's killing this girl, he realizes he's getting some sort of sexual arousal from the girl. And rather than kill another family, he just replicates the thing that he got his sexual arousal from.
That makes sense. Smart. You should be a detective.
Should be.
Yeah. Be a police officer.
Missed my calling.
Yeah. It was in his hometown, though. So it could have been, like you're saying, like he's going from his hometown and did that in his hometown. Then he's like...
Didn't get caught.
He's like, I gotta get out of here. And so he moves to Gainesville and tries to start something new. You know, that totally makes sense to me. He was only attached to the 5 murders in Gainesville officially, though, and he was sentenced to death for all 5 on April 20th, 1994. The confession to the Shreveport murders came shortly before his execution, so I'm not sure how much of that can be believed. He wrote a handwritten confession and apology for them. The thing with when people write confessions right before they're about to die is just like, just put it out there. I honestly don't think it's honest from them. They're just like, well, I'm just going to wipe this slate off for somebody else. Like, if they're the ones that murdered them, I'll give them a pass by saying I'm the one that did it, you know?
I just don't see this guy making friends enough where he's like, yeah, I'll take credit for these killings so that my buddy doesn't have to like take
I don't
the fall
think it's
for
a
it.
friend. I just think it's like, you're a killer, I'm a killer too, and I can, like, you know what I mean?
He just seems so antisocial. I just don't... I understand what you're saying, like, with it in general. With this guy, I don't know. I feel like he did kill those people.
Maybe.
I'm shocked he
Could
would
be.
confess to it, though. Like, he wouldn't want to grant peace of mind to anyone. I just kind of feel like he wanted other folks to know, like, oh, I killed more.
Maybe. That totally makes sense. I mean, he did try to kill his own dad. You never know. Rowling was executed by lethal injection at Florida State Prison on October 25th, 2006. After a final rejected appeal, his last meal was lobster tail.
It's a good
Classy.
choice.
I mean, that shit's good, but I feel like I would want more than that. Not just lobster tail. I'd be like, no, bring me like 50 of those.
Well, maybe he had a bunch of them. Like, maybe that was just the item that he's like, this is what I want. But I want like 5 lobster tails.
Now, don't they have a limit to how much they can spend on their last meal?
Honestly, I don't even know.
Oh, okay. Anyway, there are a number of documentaries on him, even a feature film called The Gainesville Ripper, if you want to check those out. So everyone should just keep an eye out at all times. I mean, don't let your guard down. You never know. If there's someone acting strange around you, don't just push it off like it's a big deal. The girls at My Favorite Murder are just like, fuck politeness. That's their thing.
Yeah.
So, like, don't just be nice to people because they're weird. I don't know. I'd rather everyone be safe, especially in this climate right now where everything's kind of gray. So I'm going to end this whole section out with a fun horror movie fact. Did you know that Scream was originally titled Scary Movie?
That's funny.
I
did not know that.
It's so ironic. And what's even more ironic is there was controversy after the release of Scream because a number of killings and crimes were deemed as direct results of Scream. So it's like, murder inspires Scream. Scream inspires murder. It's just this whole
art
cycle.
imitating life. Then
Oh my
life
God.
imitating art.
It's fucking crazy. But anyway, yeah. So that is the Gainesville Ripper.
That was fascinating, dude. That was really good. Solid fucking research. It is just horrifying to learn of how despicable a human being can truly be. And it's like, I get that some people have horrific upbringings that I could never imagine and would never want to. The idea it could create something so awful within a human being
Yeah.
that it winds up costing other people their life.
And that's the thing about the human brain, too, that we'll never understand because everyone processes everything differently.
Right.
So it's just something that everyone creates their own coping mechanisms, and some people just can't cope. So, it's just fascinating to me.
It's fascinating. I agree, it's fascinating. It's also horrifically tragic.
Oh,
but
it is, absolutely.
When you hear about it, you just want to hear more about it. It's oddly, I don't want to say addicting because that's a weird word to use, but it's like, it just makes you want to just learn more and more about the human psyche and other cases where stuff like that happens. So, no, I totally agree. I understand. It's great stuff. So good job, Robin. Like we mentioned at the beginning of this episode, if any of you have any stories you would like to share with us, and Robin even mentioned, like if you have a true crime story, we definitely want to hear it. Email storytime@scaryish.com or go to our website, scaryish.com, and click on Contact Us and send us your story or hit us up on any of our social medias. We definitely want to hear from you. Robin, for the folks who want to donate to us monetarily, how can they do so?
So you guys can head on over to our Patreon, patreon.com/scaryish-podcast. There's a whole bunch of different tiers you can check out. You can also go to our Ko-fi, ko-fi.com/scaryish-podcast. Those are one-time donations, and all those go to upgrading our studio setup. And yeah.
Right on.
You can also join us for our live shows and then donate on there, because that's always fun. There's a whole bunch of different stuff that you can check out on there. So
please do. We'd love to see you there. It's a really fun time. I think that's just about everything we have for episode 120, though. So
I cannot believe we've done 120.
We've done 240 fucking topics for the show.
If you think about it, some episodes have more than one topic each. So it's like, holy guys, we have so many topics. Please listen to them all. If you're new to the podcast, we have a lot of stuff you guys can go check out. A long
backlog for you folks to go through. Absolutely. But Robin, go ahead and sign us out.
Keep on creeping on, and we'll talk to you guys later.
Bye.